Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show, a podcast to help you get an insider's view of the financial world and escape common investment traps. We look at the financial news of the day and help you make sense of it so you can relax about money. And here's your host, Paul Winkler.
All right, we are back here on the Investor Coaching Show. Okay, so, Ira, your turn, man. Come on.
All right, so you're always saying you shouldn't have to shift things around, things shouldn't have to change. Well, I actually have to say that I've had a shift in some of my thinking, and that is about 529 plans.
Go for it.
Okay?
Oh,
yeah.
He's going to get into some controversial territory here.
Well,
all right.
Okay, so I've never...
Oh, gosh.
I've always been a little skeptical of the 529 plan because, I never did them for my kids.
Uh-huh.
My daughter went to school for 2 years in Florida, and the state paid for her education for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Once she left, then the state said, no, we're not paying for you to go to school in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
My son here in Tennessee went to college for a year, actually attended classes for a semester. That didn't work in my book. So if I would have put money into the 529 plan, that money would have been a waste. If I took it out, I would have had to pay the tax on the money that came out.
Now on the gain, to be fair.
Well, yeah, on the gain.
On the gain,
Right.
on the gain in the accounts, and then a penalty if it wasn't used for education purposes.
Right.
But now we got the Roth IRA thing, so
Well, and that's kind of why I've shifted my thinking about that. I believe that if parents work with their kids, they're involved in their education, making sure they get their homework done, meeting with their teachers, encouraging them. There's no reason why most kids cannot get a scholarship of some sort from some university. So if you teach them early enough, when I have this conversation with clients, I tell them, when you get into ninth grade, that's when you sit down and say, look, those first 8 years, that was practice. Now it counts, and you only have 3 years. Because the first semester of your senior year of high school, that is where you're going to start applying for colleges. So the colleges are going to make their decisions basically on your 3 years of high school, how you do on your college entrance tests, and what other extracurricular activities you participated in, whether it was student politics, newspapers, sports. That's what they're going to make their decisions on. Well, if they get scholarships, then they won't need the money in the 529. If they decide they're not going to college, we all think our kids are going to go to college.
But you have an exemption from the penalty if they get scholarships, if I'm correct. Evan?
I'd have to look at that.
I think that there is one of the exceptions. We'll take a look at it, but I think that is an exception to that. Yeah. You can get it out without that penalty.
If they decide, like Evan's boys did, go into the military will pay for their college. If they decide not to go to college, there was just too many factors. And what I've pretty much encouraged, and I always say, look, my job as a coach is to help you understand the different options that you have, and then you pick the option that's best for you and your family.
Okay, so let me just throw that out there really quick because we have the beauty of the internet. It says, you'll be happy to learn that there's a scholarship. This is from, this Fidelity put this out, to learn that there's scholarship exception to the 10% penalty. You can take a non-qualified withdrawal from 529 up to the amount of the scholarship, and you'll pay taxes on the earnings. You won't pay the additional 10% penalty that's imposed on a non-qualified withdrawal. So does that change your opinion on that, Eddie? I'm curious.
Well, what changes my opinion now is the new rule that you can roll that money over into the Roth IRA.
I think that's a good thing, isn't it?
I think that's a great thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're going the other
He's
direction.
He's now 4 529s, or at least more.
How did I miss that? I guess I totally missed that. I'm sorry. I was
because
I was out to lunch here.
My thoughts on that have always been, look, you're putting the money away. You're sacrificing what could be a new car payment, a vacation.
Right.
If you then have to take that money out and pay a penalty on it, where if you just put it into an account, into yours and your wife's name or husband's name or your name, and just say, this account is for my child's college education. You'll have to pay capital gain taxes, but depending upon your income, that could be very, very small. But if they end up not needing that money to go to college, that's just more money towards your retirement account. Now, granted, this money in the 529 would go into the child's Roth IRA, but you're setting that child up with the foundation of either getting an education with tax-free money or retirement foundation with tax-free money. So
now the Roth can be your own.
No, it's got to be no.
The beneficiary.
The beneficiary.
It has to be the beneficiary of it, but you can change beneficiaries.
Yes, but okay. So for example, if you had your
this is getting interesting.
So if you had your eldest son down as the beneficiary on one, and the younger son is the beneficiary on the second, but the older son didn't go on to college, so you made the younger son the beneficiary of both of them, and then he decided, or let's say there was excess money left over, so let's say it grew to $100,000. Now that $100,000 is technically the money for the younger son. The older son doesn't get it. So yes, that's one of the downfalls or pitfalls of the whole thing, is that the Roth IRA has to be opened up in the name of the beneficiary of that 529.
Oh yeah, for 15 years under that beneficiary's name. So that's how they get around that.
Right.
Okay.
So you have to kind of be very careful in how you're planning the 529s, who the beneficiaries are.
Yeah, that's good.
And whether or not you want to go ahead and change the beneficiary.
Yeah, and that's one of the big issues that I find a lot of people have. Evan's like chomping at the bit. Go, Evan.
No, go ahead.
Well, the thing that I find is that the loss of control, the concern about loss of control. Now, the 529, that the benefit has always been that you can change beneficiaries. You can take it back and spend it on yourself, your own education. You can't do the Roth thing as we were talking about, but you can go and spend it on your own education if you're crazy like me and you decide to go get a master's degree when you're in your late 50s.
Yeah, and I mean, some of those things to me are icing on the cake. And, you can only put in $35,000 into the Roth anyway. If you had a balance of $100,000 left, you can't put all of that into a Roth IRA, period. But I bet for the last decade anyway, I've mostly been talking with parents about something we just call a launch fund. And we talk about, okay, do you want to structure that as a custodial account, in a uniform transfer to minors, and it's in the child's name? Pros, it's taxed at the child's bracket. Cons, if they marry a Hell's Angel, it's their money. There's no perfect solution to some, a lot of these things. Or it could be, as Ira said, you just have a segregated bucket in your own name that's dedicated for the child.
Yeah.
And, or you could have some in a 529. And it's a little bit like tax diversification that we talk about with clients for retirement. I like to have, give a client a bucket of those so that, okay, maybe they do decide to go into business and they don't go into college, but you can use that to buy their welding equipment or buy their, whatever.
Right.
And so I want to make sure people don't misunderstand Ira's thing of, we're not saying don't save for college. We're saying use the appropriate vehicle so that you've got some flexibility for the money that you put back for that, and you're not as hamstrung by the government if they change the rules.
Yeah, and when you said launch fund, I like that. That just hit me because it was kind of what my father did.
Yeah.
My very first year of school, he was like, I'm taking care of you. I got it. Well, what I didn't necessarily get is
that was a tank of gas and a pizza.
I didn't even get that. You talk about extra money, forget it. That was not my parents. We pay it for the meal plan at your school.
There you go.
And we pay your tuition and where you're going to be actually living. It's all up to you. So what I ended up doing is I ended up working for a company that had tuition reimbursement. That really worked out quite nicely. And then I was able to work 40, 50 hours a week while going to school, getting the tuition taken care of. And that was nice. But he had kind of a launch fund. It was great because it got me into school. It got me into the swing of things that I can do this. And then I started, but then I had to switch gears after my first year because I couldn't afford to be out where I was, and not work. I was out this hole in the wall school out in the middle of nowhere, and their jobs were few and far between out there.
Yep.
But for sure.
But the interesting thing about the 529 plan, when you look at why it was created, it was actually created more for the middle class to be able to accumulate money tax-free to help pay for college. And it became something that is used by more wealthy people as a way of trying to reduce some of their estate.
Right.
Grandparents, will just upload several years.
Because it's a completed gift.
5 years worth.
Because we call it a completed
front.
gift.
Right.
Yeah. Even though it's not a completed gift in that you can't pull the money, that you could pull the money back if you really wanted to. It's considered a completed gift, a completed one for terms of estate taxes. Sure. Yeah. So just a real quick note. I always like to make this note. We are not necessarily fans of the state that we live in's 529. I hate to say it, but we're just not, because the level of diversification and 529s differ in which state that you happen to be in. Some states will have a lot better diversification options. So
call us.
Yeah, let us know. Listening to the Investor Coaching Show, and not because we get paid by those states. We don't.
No,
we get paid nothing. Be back right after this. Thanks for tuning in to the Investor Coaching Podcast. Now, you may be one of these people that's been listening and realizing, wow, investing, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and financial planning, tax laws constantly changing, and recognizing that maybe you might need some help in this area, but you don't want just anybody to help you out. So we have 10 offices in the Middle Tennessee area, and everything we do is fee only. We align our interests with your interests. So you can get an initial 15-minute phone call with any one of our offices just by going to paulwinkler.com/call. That's it. Every one of the offices is run by somebody with 20 plus years experience. They're all degreed planners. They all have academic backgrounds in investing, and you can get the help that you need. So if you want to set up a complimentary phone consultation, just go to paulwinkler.com/call. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about insurance.
One of those exciting topics that people have, but we're at the start of the year, although oftentimes, your insurance typically renews just kind of based on whenever you finally started with that particular policy. But this article kind of jumped out at me. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Buying home and auto insurance is becoming impossible.
I can attest, it is incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Because we actually got canceled.
Did you?
Yes.
You could have written this article.
I could have written that article.
Educate us.
So there was, I won't name the insurance company, although I'm really, really tempted. But there was a situation, you may remember a few years ago. Well, we had some ice damming. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then there was a tree.
Yes.
That fell. Bam. Takes out really more just had to be removed. The tree had to be removed. And then gutters were taken out as a result of it. And there were a couple, cosmetic things because, you get a tree hits the side of your house and
it'll do some damage.
Yeah, but it wasn't like huge.
Right.
And then there were a couple other things that were, let's say that the situation was that a couple other things that we weren't sure whether they might be claims. And what we did is we called and says, hey, maybe can you guys send an adjuster out there and take a look at this and see what, because there may be an issue here. There was an issue, but we were like, no, I've been in the insurance business. I sold insurance. I got my property and casualty license early on. And I said, I'm just not going to file a claim on this. I just, we both, my wife and I looked at each other and go, it's not worth it because, because you think when you buy insurance, the idea is to have insurance against something going wrong. And then the reality is, once something goes wrong, they don't want you anymore. I used to joke about that early on in the business. So we decided not to file a claim.
Right. Too late.
We didn't file a claim. The one we did file a claim on, there was a minimal amount of payment for a tree coming, smashing, and taking out gutters and things like that. Your claims were higher than what our threshold was that we wanted. We're canceling it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Once the insurance company knows about it, to them, that's a claim. So, you can call your agent.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because I don't remember it being that way. Maybe it is that way now, and maybe I just didn't. We were told that it was not.
Yeah,
I haven't been in that business for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
So maybe my memory might be cloudy as to whether that's a claim if I call, but I don't actually file it.
Yeah.
Maybe it is.
It's one of those unofficial, official kind of things probably. But like if you call your agent and say, hey, this is what went on, what do you think? That's between you and your agent, and nothing has happened. But like if you, whatever, like it was a Saturday and your agent's off and you call the home office, hey, this happened. I'm thinking about making a claim.
I think you might be right. It might be that. Maybe that's why, even though we did what we thought was the right thing not file a claim because it was, because, the thing that I always talk about regarding insurance is that when you have, like, say, deductibles, and you have very, very low deductible. I think about health insurance when I sold health insurance a million years ago. And the idea is if you have a really low deductible, if every time you have some health condition go on, the paperwork has to change hands.
Yeah.
And there's work that has to go into that. And that increases your costs from an insurance company standpoint, and thereby they're going to have to charge you a higher premium. Why not have just a higher deductible plan?
Right.
So you're not dealing with every little picky claim that comes in. They're not having to file paperwork on all of it or pay money out, and thereby you can save some money. And so that's where my thinking was, and apparently it was flawed.
Well, this is happening on a massive scale. What you described. Not so much, accidental claims, so to speak, but huge losses from national disasters prompt the industry to jack up prices and pull back from some markets, which is creating a worst possible scenario for consumers. After Allstate, in this case, suffered billions of dollars in losses and failed to get the rate increases it wanted, it resorted to the nuclear option. The insurance giant threatened last fall to stop renewing auto insurance for customers in 3 states that hadn't given in to its demands, which would have left those policyholders scrambling for coverage.
So
the states blinked.
The states blinked.
The states blinked.
That's okay. So it sounds like you're going where I was going to go. So you just keep going. Okay.
Yeah. So in December, New Jersey approved a rate increase of 17%. New York, a 15% hike.
That was where I was going.
Regulators in California are allowing them to boost rates by 30%. And so, some of these people, they weren't necessarily going to pull out of the state, but as things were renewing, they just weren't going to renew policies if they didn't get the rate increase. Or in some cases, as we get through the article, they're going to discontinue renewing home insurance, either because of wildfires, because of floods. They've just had an increase in claims activity. And when that happens, they're going to raise rates. But all of that's state regulated.
That's where I was going to go, because I thought that, a lot of people would have that question as you were reading that. I thought, people are going to have a question around what you just said because they didn't get the increases that they were hoping for. And in your mind, you go, from who?
Yeah.
And, the people don't realize that the insurance companies have to go to the state to get an approval to get those rates increased. And it's supposedly there to protect the consumer. And in this particular case, what happened is they basically said, we got these loss ratios, and what we're going to do is we got to raise rates. But, and they don't have that ability without the state's approval. Then that's it. Okay, we're just not going to renew this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, now insurance companies are starting to pull out of certain counties, certain regions, and states. In Florida, it happens to be Florida Citizens Property Insurance. That's kind of like their insurer of last resort. if you can't get it through a State Farm, Allstate, Progressive, whatever. Most states have those.
Well, I could actually talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
We have a vacation home down in Florida, and I got the letter from the insurance company that they were dropping 65,000 homes.
Oh, wow.
And moving out. So the agent basically got us into Citizens. The premium was probably about 50% less than what I was paying.
Wow.
Or could find me another policy that was 30% more than what I was paying. So naturally, we took the one from Citizens, the state insurance company policy.
What?
Yeah, somehow it's.
So what's the difference in the benefits? I mean, is it because you'll have difference in benefit designs, as in replacement cost coverage versus non-replacement cost coverage.
The benefits are probably not nearly as good.
There's got to be some kind of an issue with the benefit coverage.
Yeah, but I just got a letter from Citizens that they were that I was offered another policy from another company. And because of the way their laws were structured, that I would have had to take this other policy. So when I called my agent, she said, no, the rule is if the new premium is more than 50% more than what you're paying at Citizens, you can stay at Citizens. So the premium would have gone from $2,000 to $4,000, which was a 100% increase.
Wow.
So I didn't have to do that. My mother complains about insurance down there. My siblings complain about insurance down there, that there's almost nobody left. Everybody is pulling out of Florida.
Well, they're the largest insurer now in Florida.
Yeah. And the letter does state that, they may only pay about 70% of the cost of the damage.
And you look at, it's not just Florida, but I'm seeing other areas. Yeah, because I'm seeing that areas that used to be prone to tornadoes are less prone to tornadoes, and areas that used to not get tornadoes are getting them on a regular basis. Like
North Carolina has been reduced in coverage from some carriers because of some of the hurricanes and things like that. And of course, the California wildfires over the last couple of years, they had some unusual losses. But in addition to that, cars are getting more expensive. Repairs are getting more expensive. Parts have gone up. And so just the simple inflation of just things going up, the insurance companies are paying more to fix a car than they were 5 or 10 years ago. But they are outpacing inflation. Car insurance rates have increased 19% in the 12 months through last November, which is 6 times the national inflation rate over that same 12-month period. So there's a lot going on.
It's a huge issue. I was just looking at that one company in question, and there was something out there on them. It says, the pros and cons. Insurers some homes and private companies may offer more affordable rates than private insurers. The cons are limited extra coverage options. So I would think maybe that's schedules. Maybe you have certain collections, collectibles. Excuse me. So that you won't maybe get coverage on those types of things. Coverage gaps for higher value homes. Surcharges may apply if the company doesn't have enough funds to pay claims. So I always think that there's 100 pennies in the dollar. And I was wondering, what is the drawback of something that is a lot cheaper? But just be aware that if you're getting hit on this, you're not alone. You're not sitting out there alone. You're the only person getting hit in these types of things. I've been told that this was going to happen by my agent for a long time. Yep. He was just watch for it. There's no place to hide right now.
No, there's not.
And that's the frustrating thing. So what do you do? Maybe higher deductibles, possibly.
Higher deductible. I was talking with Dan the other day about this, actually, and he ended up shifting his primary vehicle to one of the not as new cars in their stable. He's driving the junker to work now instead of the new pickup truck and that kind of stuff, just so you don't have the mileage on that.
Yeah, less mileage, for sure.
There's just ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, this is Paul Winkler. Hope you enjoyed today's edition of the Investor Coaching Show. You want to learn more about what we do, go to our website, paulwinkler.com. You can watch some of the videos there, and if you're not already a client, you can set up a free initial consultation. Until next time, I'm Paul Winkler, reminding you that I believe that more educated investors are more confident investors. and confident investors are more successful investors. Have a great one. Advisory services offered through Paul Winkler, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Paul Winkler, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation.